Alright, so the project right now is with this John Deere B, but the problem I was having with this tractor is it would slip out of gear. Now with a manual transmission, you have to understand how you come up with the different gear combinations. Of course, you could have one set of gears, one set a big and a small gear, and then you get a little bit smaller and a little bit bigger, and so on for all 6 of the gears. But they were able to get the ratios in a way that you have 3 sets of gears and 1 range shifter before that. So there's the way the range shifter works is you can either be in direct drive or you can go through another set of gears to get into a lower gear range. So the way John Deere did it with the older models was you had first, second, and third gear, and then another shifter that shifted from high to low range. Essentially what they've done with this tractor is got rid of that second high-low range shifter and made it so when you move the shifter to the bottom of the cage or the gate and move it over, that shifts the range. And then you go up and then choose another gear. So the problem with my tractor was you could put it in this gear, but then the range shifter would pop out. So when you brought the stick back down, the shift fork wasn't in the right spot. So the shift lever would get stuck here. And then you're stranded. You can't go anywhere. So let me show you in the transmission where this range shifter would be. So the power comes from the crankshaft, through the clutch, through the first reduction gear. Now, this range gear, right here, can either be like that, not touching this gear on the bottom here, on the counter shaft, and driving directly from the input shaft to this sliding gear shaft. Or when you shift the range over like this, the power then goes from the input shaft to that gear on the counter shaft, then back up to the sliding gear shaft. So this is not directly connected to that. It goes through a reduction. So it's a little bit of a process to tear one of these apart. The first step is to pull off the flywheel cover and then the flywheel. And then you can get this 4th and 6th gear cover off. In there will be the 4th and 6th sliding gear and the fixed 4th and 6th gear. So you have to pull this off with a gear puller. This one just slides right off. Then there's a retainer, and this bearing can come right out. And you have to remove the shift forks. Here is one of them. I think this is for the 4th and 6th gear. And then here's the range shifter. You can see how it sits down in there and can slide the range gear. 4 shafts go through there, and there. So I'll talk more about how this goes back together when we're putting it together. Now on this side, you have to take off the platform, the operator platform there, as well as the brake. You have to remove the brakes so you can get this first reduction cover off. But before you can do that, you have to take the clutch off. Before you can do that, you have to slide the wheel out. Unless your wheel is already far enough out, you need about this much space so you can slide the clutch off and take it out. And you also have to remove this clutch fork. I did have this first reduction cover off when I first went through this tractor. I have not been into the transmission yet though, aside from what I've taken apart already. Now before we can take this first reduction gear cover off, we have to drain the oil out of it. And this holds engine oil. It's actually, the oil kind of splashes over from the engine and sits in here. So when you put this back together, you have to fill it with a couple quarts of engine oil so it doesn't run dry. From what I remember, I think I filled this with about 50% Lucas, so it's going to be thick. And then we can also drain the oil from the rest of the transmission. A little bit of water, no metal shavings though. Uh-oh. So these two 1/2-inch bolts came in the mail. So I was able to use them to pull this drive disc off. Next there should be another friction disc, and the clutch should just slide right off. Now we can start pulling the bolts out of this first reduction cover, and before we take it off we have to take that cotter pin and nut off. Alright, now there should be nothing else holding this cover on, aside from the gasket. There are dowel pins. There's one dowel pin over here, and there's one on the bottom over here. You're gonna have to take that first reduction gear off with the cover, and you also put it back on with the cover. So just be mindful of that. And there's a spacer that goes in between this gear and the housing, so don't lose that. Here's that spacer. That's probably the hardest part of this whole ordeal. Now, the one good thing about taking apart your previous work is you can inspect how you did things. I can see here that this Loctite 518 was a very good choice of gasket sealant for this flange. You can see how it spread pretty even around the whole cover, and it's not too thin, so I didn't tighten it too early. So I'll definitely be using this Loctite 518 when I reassemble. Now, continuing with disassembly, we've got some safety wire. Now we have 3 bearing covers here. The first one is for the sliding gear shaft. Well, actually it's for this input shaft, but the sliding gear shaft is here as well. This one is for the counter shaft, and this one is for the PTO shaft. I'm not going to be taking this one off because there's nothing wrong with the PTO. Look at all that play in that bearing. This gear looks in good condition. Now we have to get this bearing off. And according to the manual, you just put it like that and hit it through. There it is. There's that bearing. So this should be the range gear. It looks in good condition. This smaller one, this bigger one, and there's the sliding gear shaft. So now we have to figure out how to get this gear out, and look at that. Look at all that end play. Oh, of course there's going to be end play. The cover's off. And there's going to be shims behind here, because anytime you have tapered roller bearings, you have to set the backlash on them. So make sure you keep track of those shims. Yes. Yes. So I use my dealer only specialty socket to get this off. Luckily it wasn't too tight. That would have been a nightmare. Now this countershaft should just slide right out, and all the gears are going to go all over the place, so take a picture of that. There we go. One countershaft. And here's what I think the culprit is. See how worn down those teeth are? Every single one of these teeth is broken or chipped. There's our other shift spring. Been looking for that. Try and get some of this goop out of here. I should be wearing gloves. And there's our shift detent. And just like that, pops right out.